today. My name is Pat White. Well, I'll do intros in a second, but let's just do it the right way. All right, before we get into it, just so we know, everything here is informational. This is not financial guidance. This is not financial recommendation. This is not accounting or tax guidance. Nothing we are saying here is that. If you have any questions about that, please take those questions to your certified financial advisor, CPA, tax lawyer, whoever you need to from that side. Y'all know me. My name is Pat White. I'm the CEO of Bitwave. Bitwave is the world's first digital asset enterprise tax and accounting and finance platform designed to help businesses that are using crypto to bridge the gap from the traditional finance world to the crypto world. A lot of fun stuff coming out. We've got a lot of new announcements that we're going to be doing in January, so I'm not going to talk too much about Bitwave this time. I am genuinely happy to be introducing my co-conspirator on this webinar, Hamdee Khade. Hamdee, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate that, Pat. Well, my name is Hamdee Khade. I am a little bit about myself. I am a JD MBA from UNC. I've worked previously before, integrating into the blockchain. I've worked across numerous Fortune 500 companies from Next Era Energy to MetLife. And right now I have a passion about, trying to develop critical solutions to solve real world problems. And I am the co-founder and CEO of DeVO Protocol. What DeVO Protocol is basically a decentralized ecosystem that aims to solve a lot of the inefficiencies that exist in philanthropy, such as the lack of transparency or the lack of reward and verification for volunteer efforts, while simultaneously incorporating high-value corporate services such as advertising, recruitment, and data acquisition. This is all done by creating an economy in philanthropy utilizing blockchain technology.
Amazing. Hamdee, welcome today. This is going to be a little bit of a different kind of format than you guys are used to. We've got an agenda, but honestly, we are just going to kind of do this as a fireside chat style, where me and Hamdee are going to talk until the end, and then Hamdee's going to get a chance to show you the demo of his product. I want to do it this way because I am passionate about philanthropy and about bringing change through different economic models and things like that. But I honestly, it's not the world I work in. So as much as anybody here, I actually want to get on and just sort of learn from you, buddy. Like that's kind of what's exciting to me is when I get to sort of sit with someone and learn about a part of the world that I don't know much about. It's always the best thing in the world. So we're gonna be doing this kind of a fireside chat style with a quick demo towards the end. If anyone has any questions, because we're doing this fireside chat style, I'm gonna keep my eye on the chat and the Q&A. Just drop them in there. Honestly, just drop any questions in at any time, and we'll stop and we'll answer them as we're kind of going through this stuff. Perfect. Okay. Well, let's get it goes without saying that part of this is we're doing a series here around ESG. We'll have some more environmental focused. This is sort of our social component. We'll have some more environmental focused components in the new year here as we get into it. But the goal here is that we are, as everybody in the space, we're passionate about how we can make a difference and not just sort of make money, but also make a difference here. So this is sort of an ongoing trend from us. So Hamdee, where I want to start with this, buddy, is I want to start with how you got into this. Like, why did philanthropy and giving jump out to you? Like, what from your background kind of like got you interested in all this?
For sure, 100%. So, when people look at my background, like, the JD MBA, the first thing they think about is, okay, he's going to integrate to the corporate world. He's going to probably want to become an executive for a Fortune 500 company. And that was the goal. That was the goal initially, Pat. I'm not going to lie to you. But, simultaneously, as I went through my professional and academic career, I always liked, giving back to my community. And so I saw a lot of problems that existed, which I'll go, happy to go more in detail into that. But, some of them were I couldn't find qualified and verified volunteers in order to help me, or I couldn't have access to donations in order to allow me to achieve my future efforts. But, what really pushed me towards actually, going to the blockchain and starting DeVO was that my little sister was trying to get into medical school, and she had to volunteer around 2,400 hours. Now, at that same time, my grandmother, who doesn't speak English well, it was 93 years old, was at home and she needed somebody to take care of her. So I asked her, I'm like, why don't you just go volunteer for your grandmother? I mean, she's right here. It's almost impossible to find somebody to help take care of her. And she's like, I can't. I was like, why can't you? She's like, it has to be via a nonprofit organization that has the ability to record and verify my volunteer hours. And I felt that was insane because it wasn't only happening to, a family member of mine, my sister, but I could only imagine the number of people who want to achieve their academic goals, but simultaneously they cannot, because not only do they have the resources in order to go and attribute, let's say, community service hours, but also simultaneously they can't even they can't even volunteer for themselves. So that's where all DeVO started. Was the main goal was to verify to verify and record volunteer hours and even reward them. And then it grew to a huge tree, which it is today.
It's interesting. That's so interesting to me because it actually explains really well how you ended up on blockchain as kind of the platform here. Because if all it was kind of moving money from point A to point B, that's not actually the most important. Like blockchain it's a fine solution, but it's not necessarily the best. But if it actually is, how do you set up a group of varying people around the world, and everyone can kind of contribute verification of volunteer hours and stuff like that. That starts to make a lot of sense here. That's really interesting. So when did you start DeVO, and what's the journey been like from point A to point B here?
Yeah, for sure. So I started DeVO around 2 years ago with the other co-founder, Ibrahim. And the journey has been phenomenal, man. I mean, it's not even, I can't even compare where we started to where we are right now. A couple of things, for example, that we have achieved across these 2 years is that we have around 27,000 volunteers who are registered. We have a community of around 65,000 people. We have our B1 DApp, which I'm very, very excited to show you guys today that we have amazing strategic partners, Bitwave, of course, being one of them, but also we have many others, and also nonprofit organizations who have joined on the platform in addition to the volunteers, because they truly believe in the mission and they see the long-standing inefficiencies that people just seem to keep on ignoring. In addition to that, we have an amazing team of around 27 people, and they're attributed to places like like they work with the BBC, they work with Pro Cycling, they work with FIFA, they go to places like Oxford and MIT. And so I'll be lying if I said that all this was my work. It's actually the work of the amazing team that we have, who are very skillful and from diverse backgrounds. So to answer your question, Pat, in a short form, we've come a long way.
No worries. Take your time. This is the fun part of a fireside chat, is we get to just chit chat a lot here.
Yeah.
And so was the very, very first problem that you guys ended up working on specifically around the volunteer hour tracking, or did you start working on more of the fund release and verification side there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it initially started with, with the volunteer hours, right? It was like, how do you record volunteer hours? How do you verify it? And how do you reward them, right? And so like that was the main focus. But the more that we dug deeper into it, Pat, the more we found out two things. A is the fact that that the amount of inefficiencies that exist in philanthropy is substantial, right? I mean, you're talking about, for example, not only people can record and verify their hours, people don't know where their donations are going. So that's one start. Secondly, is the fact that, corporate entities are seeing, less and less value add in, increasing their goodwill via philanthropy, right? Via ESG efforts. And then you have volunteer organizations who, unfortunately can't have access to these qualified and verified volunteers. Can't have access to substantial amount of donations because, unfortunately, donors do not trust or do not see where their money is being spent. And, so that's the first prong that we saw. We saw the level of unfortunate inefficiencies that do exist, and they have been long-standing and nobody seems to solve them.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that we recognized was the fact that why nobody wants to solve them. Nobody wants to solve them, Pat, because there is no market opportunity. That's why initially there was no market opportunity. If you see any problem outside philanthropy, a problem equals market opportunity, but in philanthropy, a problem just remains a problem. So the second prong came along, was like, how can we solve these inefficiencies? And the answer was, you create an economy. You create an economy in philanthropy where it is incentivizing for individuals to want to go and solve these problems. And then the way that they solve these problems is via an ecosystem that they contribute to. And the ecosystem, which I'm very glad and very proud to represent today, is DeVO Protocol.
Let's talk really quickly. Step back just 1 second. Let's talk about some of the inefficiencies we do see in philanthropy. in general? Because I know, I when I give, I'm always pretty diligent about using one of the ranking sites that goes into like, the reports that basically tell you what percentage of your donation actually gets to the end cause, and that's one of the major driving factors that I use when I'm making philanthropic decisions. Like, what are some of the inefficiencies that actually are happening in philanthropy?
For sure, 100%. And you just mentioned it right now, Pat, is the fact that, how many people are going to go and conduct the diligent research like that? Not a lot. A lot of people, they're not going to go out their way and do that. And they shouldn't. They should not have to. Why should they have to? Why cannot there be a platform that actually does that for them and actually shows them, where their donations are being spent and give them power back? So obvious point is the lack of transparency of where funds are going. So that's the first and foremost. The second point.
Let's dig into that one, because I love that use case. This is,
All right.
One of the things that I love about blockchain, but there's this really funny thing about blockchain where, in some situations on blockchain, transparency is a bug, not a feature. Like, for a lot of the stuff that we look at, if you're looking at payments, like how much money Bitwave gets paid every month by a client, or how much we pay to our vendors. Transparency is actually a bug of the system in some ways. Like, I don't want people to know how much money we're making. I don't want them to know how much money we're spending. But with philanthropy, that's actually exactly what you want. So, tell me a little bit about how you actually can use the blockchain to increase the transparency of payments around philanthropies.
For sure. And, this is the beauty about blockchain. And I must iterate the fact that the secret is utilizing the substantial and valuable amount of blockchain technology integrated with also Web2 technology as well. It's important to use both of them. But a couple of blockchain technologies that can be utilized are stuff that DeVO uses, for example, decentralized identifiers, or DIDs, which are basically IDs on the blockchain, right? ENFTs, or enterprise NFTs, which are basically, non-transferable NFTs that record when a certain action has occurred. You then have what we've implemented in our in our DApp, milestone-based smart contract escrows, where basically funds are locked in a smart contract escrow and are only released when a certain milestone has been completed and it's verified that it has been completed. Then there's the non-blockchain aspect of it, right? So there's stuff like, in addition actually to blockchain, there's also stuff like, proof of reserves, for an example, which you guys do substantially well. It's because you also want to, when you donate to an organization, you want to make sure the fact that they are financially healthy, or they're as financially healthy as they state they are. And then, from the non-blockchain perspective, you have stuff like, geolocation technology, geolocation and biometric technology, in order to actually verify that not only donations are being spent, but volunteers are actually volunteering, and their hours are verified. And then on the ground verification of those things. So, long story short, there are numerous ways that you can add transparency to a specific, initiative.
What's funny is I had been thinking about all the, when I asked that question, and when I think about blockchain for crypto, I'm sorry, for philanthropy, I tend to think about hey, can I prove that if I give a small farmer charity, there's all these charities out there, they're going to help small farmers in developing countries to buy coffee plants so that they can then earn an income based on the coffee. When I think about it, I tend to think about, is there a way that I could use a blockchain to prove that the farmer in that country, it's his address? You talked a little bit about the identity piece. He says, he creates an identity chip that's attached to his address. It has a smiling picture of him, or a frowning, however he's feeling that day. And basically I can track the money that goes from my wallet to the charity wallet to him. And I can literally see exactly that flow of funds. So I tend to think about very tactical flow of funds. But what you just brought up is super interesting, is the actual, there's also the very strategic flow of funds, which is is this charity I'm donating to actually healthy? Do they have enough money to keep running? I hadn't really thought about that piece of it.
Yeah, it's definitely, and that's the secret. There's so many, it's almost impossible to have 100% transparency, right? I mean, it was 100% transparency. The thing is that you always try to implement as much transparency as possible, especially in the philanthropy sector. And it's utilizing, Web3 technologies, all the things I mentioned right now, but also even Web2 technologies like on the ground verification. Having volunteers be rewarded for actually verifying those projects. And, you know, the main goal of this is to comfort donors, to allow them to see where exactly their donations are being spent without them having to go and conduct a lot of research and go out of their way. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they're not going to do that, or they just lost complete faith in the system. So they just don't donate. But who does that affect the most, Pat? That affects the people who need help the most.
That's so interesting. So tell me why, that's really interesting. Is that a problem? Is like solvency of charities a general problem in like the traditional world? It's not one I really have spent as much time thinking about, but it must be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but there's a very significant percentage of charities do not live more than 10 years.
Wow, that's so interesting. So there's this aspect here, because we talk about this a lot because we just launched like our institutional products, and we talk a lot about how, like with the institutional product that we talk about, it's like there are things for us to learn from traditional finance. Like there are a lot of things that traditional finance does well in terms of how they segregate their client assets and things like that. But like the argument I would make is there's actually some really cool stuff that we in the crypto world could do. They could eventually be backported to TradFi, like proof of reserves and better visibility into leverage positions and things like that. So you're kind of saying there's things that you could probably learn from the traditional philanthropy world, like, you know, proper governance, things like that. But there's actually some really cool things that eventually could backport in terms of transparency and how they think about solvency, and how you as a donator think about solvency of the charities you work with.
100%, Pat. You know, one of the crucial aspects of solving all these inefficiencies is not only developing new technologies, but also simultaneously implementing technologies are traditionally implemented in other fields other than philanthropy.
How has it? So I'll tell you a personal story. In my as you know, Bitwave, we've been around for like 5 years now. We've talked to everybody who I could think about with like crypto. And I'll tell you, one of the funny groups of people that I've talked, I don't know if I've shared this story in a webinar before, but it's kind of funny. Like one of the funny groups of people that I've talked to about this is weed, like, you know, weed distributors and dealers here in California, because we have legalized marijuana. So we did a fair amount of work with different like, you know, shops that sell marijuana, growers, things like that. And what inspired it, like from our perspective, was that there was this terrible story from like 2000 or maybe like 2019, 2017, where there was these really bad fires in Santa Rosa. And Santa Rosa is where there's a bunch of the marijuana growing facilities. And a lot of the growers had all of their life savings in cash because they can't get banked. And so they basically be sitting on like $300,000 of cash. And there were multiple stories about people who literally, when they lost their house, they lost their life savings because it was all in cash under their mattress. And so, you know, you hear that as a crypto person, you're like, oh my God, like, I need, like, these guys need crypto more than anyone I've ever heard. You go to them and like they're like, yeah, crypto is interesting, but you know, a lot of the guys you talked to in the space were former black market. They're old hippies, former black market folks. Like you tell them about this magic internet money, and they're like, yeah, no, thank you. I'm fine with my cash and my armored trucks and things like that. Have you had that experience where you go to a charity and you're like, we got this great thing, you can get paid over the internet and it'll be so much more transparent. They're like, yeah, magic internet money, I'm not sure about that.
Oh, I mean, 100%, Pat. I mean, and there are numerous reasons for that. I mean, for starters, there are, you know, unfortunately, there are a couple of bad players out there who don't want to be more transparent, right? They don't want to really change from their current, you know, I wouldn't even call it, I'm just going to call it for sake of simplicity, business processes, right? Yeah. And so when they see something, even if they're going to obtain more resources, they see like something that adds more transparency, you know, they don't want to go for it. But, you know, that actually is not bad for us. It's actually good for us, because what we're trying to do is separate those. We're trying to DeVo's trying to do is be the standard in 5 years, to where in 5 years time or 10 years time, when a donor wants to go and donate to a project, they're going to ask, is this DeVo verified? So that's our goal, right? And so, you know, so that's from the verification perspective, but also in relation, as you said, to the UI UX perspective. And maybe you'll agree with me, Pat, but, you know, unfortunately, it seems like a lot of blockchain initiatives are solely made for individuals to understand blockchain, right? Yeah. And that is an unfortunate, you know, that's an unfortunate circumstance we're in right now. And so what we're trying to do at DeVo And we know a couple people who are as well, but as we're trying to do is develop blockchain 2.5, like we call it. And what blockchain 2.5 is yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically making it very easy for users to interact with our protocol, to where they need no blockchain knowledge whatsoever. How many corporations or how many volunteer organizations, how many volunteers are going to go out of their way and try to learn a specific process or trying to learn about the blockchain,
Yeah.
right? We're talking about volunteers who might be 60 years old, or corporations who have been working, who probably are still on Windows. It's like it. So you got to make it very easy for these individuals to utilize it, and that's one of the things we're trying to do. And what we feel like, and what we're trying to do, is both with our verification standard, yeah, yeah, both with our
Oh,
verification standard and easiness, is to allow them to utilize to set the standard in blockchain.
Yeah, I love that. Have you guys found a good stack that you can recommend? Like, I mean, I assume Bitwave's part of it, but like, have you found a good custodian? Like, are you saying, you go to a charity that wants to start doing this stuff, and they want to start taking donations in crypto, they're going to need some sort of custodian. Like, so are you guys recommending like BitGo, or have you guys gotten to a good stack that you feel like the philanthropies you work with are able to use without being hardcore crypto nerds like all of us?
Yeah, and as we'll show today on our DAC presentation, this is just version 1, by the way. Like, this is the very first
Yeah.
version, but we try to make it as seamless as possible for users to utilize. And obviously, there's going to have to be more iterations in order to accomplish the ultimate goal. Now, in relation to, and that's actually one of the highlights of, one of the things I love about Bitwave, is the fact that it allows individuals, like, corporations, whether they're trying to achieve their ESG initiatives, for example, or whether they're nonprofit organizations who want to really not only conduct proof of reserves, but also show their cryptocurrency accounting and how they're actually spending their cryptocurrency. It allows individuals and businesses to do that in a seamless fashion, right?
Yeah.
And so, partnering with entities like Bitwave and utilizing technologies, and having a great technical team that can actually implement that, is very crucial for them.
So you
And
you
also,
said
even
something
like the tax,
earlier.
even the tax donations, sorry, like
Oh
even the
yeah,
tax donations is very important, right? And that's another, synergy that, we'll be discussing later on.
100%. So you said something earlier that I wanted to get back to and spend a little bit of time talking about, and this is around corporate giving. You said enterprises are seeing less impact from their ESG efforts. Walk me through that a little bit. Like, tell me, why that is and what's happening there, and give me just a little bit of insight into this, and then bring it back to DeVO and how it impacts you guys.
For sure. I mean, I feel like not a lot of people are recognizing the fact that, a corporation, no matter all their ESG initiatives, no matter all their CSR initiatives, at the end of the day, on a large scale, their main incentive is to increase their shareholder value. And so they're going to look at their marketing budget and they're going to analyze it, and they're going to be like, how can this contribute most positively to that outcome, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, when philanthropy, not only are there a lot of inefficiencies, like, nobody's really marketing their goodwill efforts, for example. That's one. Secondly, they don't even see the efforts and the results that those efforts have, is a second one. They become less inclined to donate, right? They become less inclined. So, and that comes with the blockchain part, right? And in one way that DeVO is actually solving this is the fact that we're utilizing technologies such as, eNFTs and DIDs, as I mentioned right now, so when a corporation actually conducts a goodwill efforts, that's recorded with an eNFT, right, under the decentralized identifier. And then when you add gamification to that, what occurs is that their goodwill efforts are not only etched in stone and immutable, but are also highlighted to all their stakeholders. And this can be applied not only to corporations, but even to high net worth individuals and family offices whose family's legacy is extremely important to them.
I love it. So we're talking about transparency from where the funds get spent. We're talking about transparency of the charity and their cash position, their solvency, and then you're talking about transparency from the givers in terms of kind of actually showing that they are, hitting their goals. If they set an ESG goal of giving away $1 million, that they actually give away $1 million. That you're actually showing, adding transparency to the donators here, as well. Is corporate giving one of the main use cases you guys are thinking about? Is it a secondary use case to individual giving? What's the even breakdown there? I don't even know what the breakdown in the overall charity world is between corporate individual giving.
Yeah. So, as I said in the beginning, right, what we're trying to do is create an economy. And so, obviously within the economy, the four parties that we have identified, other than the marginalized individuals, of course, are the volunteers, the volunteer organizations, the donors, and the corporate entities, right? So you kind of think of four and kind of think of DeVO like in the middle as a circle. And every single one of these parties, right, faces their own difficulties and their own their own inefficiencies. So, not to review myself, volunteers, their hours and rewarding, donors don't see where their money is going, corporations increase their goodwill, and volunteer organizations, no qualified, verified volunteers, no donations, right? And so these are the problems that they're all facing. And so in order to solve this, as you stated right now, is that you not only verify every one of these participants on a single platform and record their goodwill efforts, but also simultaneously you make it seamless for them to intercommunicate, and in addition to make their actions transparent, right? And so depending on the use case example that you stated right now, no, it's not just corporations and ESG, right? It's also the fact that donors will see where their money is going. It's also the fact that volunteers will be able to record and verify their hours in addition, and record and verify in addition to be rewarded for their hours and start their own initiatives as well. And it's also volunteer organizations being able to access more donations because donors see where their money is going, be able to access that corporate help because now these corporations are incentivized to utilize DeVO even more because it increases their goodwill, are able to get qualified and verified volunteers because these volunteers can now have their hours recorded, verified, and rewarded. But you see how all these incentives, although all these problems and all these solutions, although they seem separate from a use case or from an individual perspective, they're actually all interconnected. And I like giving this example, Pat. What's the difference? A buyer and a seller in any market out there, their interest from the outset seem to be different, but only thing that connects them is the economy, and that's what DeVO does.
Yeah. So let's get into like the nitty gritty here. I'm super interested because you talked about how there's a Web 2 component of the boots on the ground piece here. So yeah. What does that tend to be like? Like how does the boots on the ground piece of this work?
Yeah, sure, 100%. So what we do is that we get qualified and verified DeVO volunteers, right, who are on the ground, and we actually reward them for their efforts of actually verifying these projects. And obviously, every project is different, right? So there's definitely going to be different standards for those different kinds of projects. But long story short, it's basically not only ensuring that the volunteers are volunteering the specific amount of time, and that's also it's like they verify those hours in addition to technology such as geolocation biometric technology. But in addition, it's actually ensuring that the volunteer organization or project are completing the goals and objectives that they say they are completing. So with the milestone-based funding, for example, right now on our DAP, we have it to where the volunteer organization has to be the one that proves it. But in addition to that, you can easily see how there's a mechanism to where you have those on the ground volunteers are the ones also attributing to that verification, right? It's like, here's an independent third-party volunteer who's actually going kind of like an audit, right? It's kind of going and verifying that these things are being completed. And that's what I told you previously is about like, there are a lot of processes and practices that are applied outside of philanthropy. And the key to this is really noticing that and incorporating that into philanthropy as well. So that's the role that they play. But obviously for every project, it's going to be different. Of course, the larger the project, you're going to have probably more verifiers. You're probably going to want to go and verify more stuff. For smaller projects, it's going to be less.
So it almost ends up being, yeah, you just said the word audit. I mean, it ends up being an audit layer on top of philanthropy, which is actually really cool as well. Can you tell me, I mean, do you have a good success story? Like, do you have a success story of a philanthropy, a charity doing this today? Like maybe there was a particular event or like a charity thinking about this holistically. Talk about any big success stories. Toot your own horn.
100%. So success stories on DeVO, is that the question, just to clarify?
Yep.
100%. So right now, we are going full-fledged in the pilot program arena. And as stated previously, one of our main goals is not to only help volunteer organizations. So when I say volunteer organization, I also mean individuals who want to start their own project, right? Empowering volunteers. So, a lot of the pilot programs we're actually releasing right now are individuals who want to start their own project. And so, I'm not going to, say her name, but basically there is this one individual who is actually attributing, and this person is amazing, by the way. She basically is supporting, 4 children in Africa in order to allow them to help achieve their academic goals, by basically paying for their expenses. And this person even moved out of her large house to a smaller apartment and has cut her standard of living significantly in order to help effectively facilitate this. And so right now, what we're doing on DeVO Protocol, and these are one of the pilot projects, is actually onboarding her on the decentralized application, putting your project on, and we already have a corporate sponsor actually who's interested in sponsoring this project. And that's basically going to be the success story over there, is the fact that we have an individual who is actually giving to the community. We have a corporate sponsor who really wants to increase their goodwill. And so, and it's just phenomenal. And we have a couple of others, in addition to some individual volunteers in Peru that are actually working. More than happy to dive deeper into that.
That's great. I mean, it's such a, we tend to think about philanthropy in terms of like just change the entire world and fix every problem. And at the end of the day, it's awesome that, looking at just don't fix every problem in the world, fix a problem for 4 kids in Africa and get them to go to school. And then the magnifying effect that gets from now having education, that community, and money that flows back to that community and all that kind of stuff. That's super interesting. Any other projects you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, so it's not only the small, and you're 100% right. It's also the micro project, it's the macro projects, right? So, a macro project that we're working with our partner D-Trash in implementing is actually a huge beach cleanup in Brazil, right? Where around 300 DeVO volunteers are going to be, having their hours verified, recorded, while also simultaneously being rewarded, right?
I mean, those pictures you see of those beaches are crazy. They every now and again, the internet, there'll be like a beach cleanup before and after that goes around. It's the most horrific thing in the entire world. And that's so marine, like my passion in philanthropy is wildlife and marine biology. So I tend to track this stuff really closely. That's really, really cool. So walk us through the whole thing. Like if I wanted to get involved in that, like I could send them some money and then I could have high level guarantee of around this is all like the cleanup happening.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just explain the use case from every single individual. I feel like so, from a donor perspective, what you would want to do, right, is you would sign up on DeVO Protocol, right? And then you would see verified projects on DeVO, right? You get to read about them, you see what they're trying to do, and then you'll donate money to that, right? Now, these projects, when they sign up, they have to list their project in milestones. Let's say 4 milestones, A, B, C, D, right? And they attribute a specific percentage to that, 25, 25, 25, 25. When you donate, that money or your donations, in addition to other people's donations, are locked in a smart contract escrow, right? And are only released per milestone. And so how are they released per milestone? A, the project or the volunteer organization has to say that we have completed this milestone, right? And B, you as the donor, they have to provide proof in addition to that. And you as the donor have to be the one who says, yes, this is significant proof, no, this is not significant proof, right? And as I stated, right, this is the very beginning. There's also other things we want to implement, like on the ground verification, right? So that's from a donor perspective. You see a project, you donate it, you get to control, you get to actually have proof that when those milestones are completed. You then have the volunteer organization, right, who are able to right now obtain these donations because now they're adding more transparency, while also connect qualified and verified volunteers who have also, subscribed on the platform, right? And so, and also corporate entities, right, who have also signed up on the platform. And now going to the volunteers. So a volunteer who signs up, they have to also be verified and signed up on the platform. They have to have their history also verified as well, right? So now it's kind of like their volunteer credit check or credit report, you could call it. And so now these qualified and verified volunteers can go sign up for these verified projects, right? And then in addition to that, when they sign up and they get accepted, they have those hours recorded and verified and added to their volunteer credit report. In addition, they're being rewarded. And they can also become a volunteer organization themselves, right? And then the corporate entity side, they see the qualified, they see the qualified the verified projects, they go and they sponsor those projects. And then in return, those efforts are highlighted utilizing Web3 technology. So you see how like that circular economy is kind of,
Yeah, bring it all together. I love it. Well, I mean, we got a couple of questions in, which are great questions. So let me remember. So the first one is, have you ever considered working with another startup like Groundswell Giving, the Groundswell Foundation, to achieve more cross-industry reach? So I think the idea here is like, is it with working with some of the other folks that are interested in transparency and rankings and ratings of charities and stuff, working with them to actually bring this to our non-crypto nerd friends is how this person phrased it, and how I will phrase it also, because that's perfect.
100%. I mean, and one of our core competencies is our partnerships, right? I mean, from the beginning of the call, not only Bitwave, and we're going to speak about this a bit later on, but a couple of things would include being able to highlight the taxes, or like able to record the tax incentives individuals get when they donate, which is very important. But it's also even the Web2 partnerships, right? So from a nonprofit standpoint, we've partnered with blockchain nonprofits like the Nordic Blockchain Association, one of the largest blockchain nonprofits in Europe, to non Web2 nonprofits, right? Like Reform Alliance, or Web2 or smaller ones like Tampa Women Stars. But going back to your question, even the product integration point, 100%, right? It doesn't have to be our partnerships in terms of technology or infrastructure doesn't only have to be for Web3, right? It's also
it's
for
one of
Web2.
the cool parts about philanthropy in general is like it's maybe sometimes it is, but it shouldn't be very competitive. Like everyone's trying to get the same thing done. We're all trying to help the world here. So collaboration should be very second nature in these projects. But I don't know if that's always the case or not.
Actually, it's funny you said that. Like even on our pitch deck, it says at the bottom, like even in our white paper, actually, is like DeVO was not created in order to compete, but it said it was created in order to collaborate.
Yeah.
And so we kind of so that's how our ecosystem was built. So going back to your question, from an infrastructure standpoint, whether it's actually going and rating these nonprofit organizations, or whether it's even helping recording these volunteer hours, 100%, why we utilize biometric and geolocation scans is because we want it to be very easy for individuals, for example, to utilize the technology they have in their persons. But these are going to require collaborations.
Honestly, once you start building up that data set, that's very usable by multiple different on-chain Web3, non-Web3, foundations and charity groups. Yeah. So there is a lot of value to having the DID piece overlaid with like hours tracking and things like that can be generally useful. And honestly, it doesn't matter that it's on chain. Like it's cool that it's on chain because you can get good economies of scale in it, but it doesn't really matter for those purposes. I mean, do you think there's a big difference between like on chain versus off chain for some of this stuff?
Well, and that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people, they try to just put everything on the blockchain because it's the blockchain. I heard somebody like 2 years ago try to make like the YouTube for the blockchain. And I'm like, what do you, doesn't really make, sense. But, it's the thing about blockchain is that it's a technology, but you got to utilize it where it's the most effective, right? So obviously, for example, there is some data out there that we're not going to put on the blockchain, right? Yeah. I mean, that people don't really want to make, public. And so it's basically utilizing certain blockchain technology for when it's utilized. A lot of the UI UX we use is non-blockchain related.
And then a question from the same individual. Are you looking to be a part of the vision displayed at the conferences happening in 2023, like Quantum Miami? Are you guys going to be at any conferences? Is that a part of your, getting the message out?
Oh, 100%. We're actually have a meeting after tomorrow about the conferences, which is like, one of the meetings I very much look forward to. I love going to conferences. I was in one in Dubai, and I went to NFT NYC. And yeah, I love those conferences, honestly. But about Miami, I mean, I would, 100%. I would love. I mean, reach out to me if you have anything particular you want to discuss.
Well, I think we have your email on one of the slides here. Actually, Julian, can you throw up a slide with Hamdee's email, and I'll put it up at the very end so we can share that with everybody and they can reach out. Hamdee, is that okay if we share your email?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Reach out with anything? Sure. Spectacular. And the last question we have, I'll just answer, is will this be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded. Everyone who's on here will get a recording link sent to them after this. So Hamdee, before in a couple minutes we'll jump into your demo, but before we do that, what I want to ask you this is, give me a little bit of a preview of the future here, and like over the next 5 to 10 years, how do you think either DeVO or just in general, I mean, like, how do you think philanthropies are going to be engaging with digital assets and with the blockchain in general? I mean, what's like 10 years looks like from now in a perfect world where everything kind of aligns and comes together?
100%. I feel like, and this is actually going to reflect in the blockchain space in addition to that, is that there will be a substantial number of you, and this is how I see it. I see it how that, not only in philanthropy, but also in blockchain in general, individuals who don't understand blockchain will be on blockchain, right? Just kind of like how individuals who don't know how a car works still drive a car. I'm one of those people. So, it's the same way. So, from a 5-10 year standpoint, you're going to find a huge influx of individuals in the blockchain philanthropic sector because of the advantages that it does provide. right? And we're going to see basically non-blockchain where there's no transparency become the non-norm, right? It's like going to be like it's going to be looked at like people used to do this, really. And so from DeVo's side, for example, in 5-10 years, actually in 5 years, we want to have like 10,000 donors signed up on the platform. We want to have like 10,000 volunteer organizations. We want to actually we're at 27,000 right now. Our next milestone is actually 100,000. We want to go significantly on top of that. There's so many initiatives, and that's the beauty about philanthropy that we can implement. These corporate services I mentioned right now, those three that we're focusing on, which is recruitment, advertising, and data, that can be expanded significantly. So our goal is also to expand that significantly as well, in addition to achieve other things such as, DeVO Green, for example, where DeVo really wants to go and enter into the carbon space, or DeVo Education, right, where it's actually DeVo not only teaching about blockchain, but also simultaneously even teaching individuals how they can create a greater impact in their community, or even being DeVo to where it's not only, helping all these individuals, but also and providing this much value, also simultaneously being the spokesperson in philanthropy and actually trying to uplift all these other amazing projects out there who are actually conducting and actually trying to achieve so well for their communities. So there's so many different initiatives. I just don't want to keep rambling on, but more than happy to, Pat. And if you want
no, well, I'll add one also, which is, because we're a pretty new partnership. We're just figuring out how we're going to click together on this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we're going to be launching in 2023 is going to be better invoice payment. So better payment rails for businesses that are paying money in crypto. And a lot of it's smart contract based. So it's the idea that I create a smart contract invoice, it gets paid, that automatically flows through into Bitwave, all that kind of stuff. There's a really cool opportunity here for because one of the things we're looking at is how do we do streaming invoices. There's a really where we say, hey, you set up a streaming invoice with us, we're going to give you, because it's so good for us as a business. Like that's good for Bitwave as a business. If you pay us through a streaming contract, what we're going to do is we're actually going to give you a 1% discount. And then we're also going to do 1% of the stream that goes directly into a DeVo smart contract. And then we have our little charity that we're going to control, and we'll send money out, and you'll have full visibility into into how we're spending that money and what we're doing with it. I think there's some really cool things on even the corporate kind of giving side of this, which is really cool.
100%. I mean, and is that just transition to talk about the proof of trust?
That's it. I'd love. By the way, one person asked one more question, which I'll say really quick, which is DeVo is the 3M of philanthropy. It didn't invent the space. It did not invent the space, but it will make the space better. I think it's an awesome way to kind of phrase, and that's blockchain in general. Is we didn't invent finance, but boy, are we going to try to make finance suck a little bit less. Go ahead. I'd love to see you. You want to kick into the demo now?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Let me see if hopefully I can share my screen. No, that's cool. 100% I did. Let me see if you can you see it?
I can see it. All right.
Is it full screen?
It's full screen.
Listen, I've been going on Zoom and Google Meets for the longest time. It never fails to. All right, awesome. And let me know if you guys can't hear it.
No sound so far. Do you want to?
No sound?
No sound. You want to just narrate?
Sure, 100%. Hold on one second. So yeah, I'll just narrate basically here. Let me put this mute then. So basically, this is like the first version of the centralized application, right? And so, what this aims to do is do a lot of things, like, for starters, it's to provide transparency so donors know where exactly the donations are going, right? So when a donor donates, it's split into milestone-based smart contracts, which I explained previously what they were. Also allows volunteers to record their time and sign up for specific projects as well. And then obviously allows volunteer organizations to actually sign up on the protocol and obtain those donations. And lastly, corporate sponsors allows them to go and sponsor a specific project, which is one of the milestones we've talked about, Pat. So, skipping forward over here is like if we want to register as an organization, right? it's just like, as I said, we really try to focus on the seamlessness and the ease for these organizations, right? So normally you get an email that you sign in. It's like a magic link, but for for sake of of time, we won't go through that. And then what you have to do, because it is Web3, right? And this is one of the things we're trying to even make better, is that they have to connect their wallet and then sign the transaction in order to create their own project, right? But that's what part of 2.5 is that, and that's actually the DApp version 2. How can we make that more seamless? So here they're filling up all the information. Here describing the project. In addition to that, they put pictures and they put a description of it. And then you have the milestones, right? So then you have the volunteers. So here the organization is saying, okay, you know what, I want volunteers with these skill sets. This is the description of it. This is when I want them. This is when it stops, right? And so this is just an example. And obviously you can put as many volunteers as you want.
So this is what you're looking for from your volunteers,
and
like who you need to volunteer for the project.
As you can see, and then after that, these are the milestones, right? So these are the milestones, as I said, that you kind of put you can put 5, 10, as many milestones as you want, but what that does is that it's also, the donations are only released when these milestones are complete. So as you can see here, adding the milestones. And then over here is the funding splits, which we have. So the funding splits is basically that not only is it released per milestone, but after that milestone is accomplished, it's what wallets do these go to, right? Because this also recognized, and that's when I talk about there's not enough, there's so much transparency you can always implement, is after milestone is complete and it's verified, it's like, okay, now what wallets are going to receive this? So it's like, you can think about in a project, there are numerous parties. There's like the landscaping, there's a travel, and that's the beauty about this. And so, after that, they go and they sign their project. So now it's like, it's on the blockchain, it's on Web3. And then after that, this is like a volunteer who's registering, right? And they put where they're from, they put a little bit about themselves, they put their skill sets. And then after that, they want to go and they volunteer for a project. They go on the project we just created right now. They said, I want to volunteer, for example. They put, why do they want to volunteer for this project? And obviously, there are different fields. There are more fields that we can implement. This just shows exactly how it's going to work. And then they choose, which one they want to go, and then they register ultimately, right? And now, from a volunteer, if they want to go and record their hours, right, where we right now is you have a Web3 timesheet where they can actually put exactly, where, what volunteer hours have they recorded, but also simultaneously, we have the volunteer organization actually going and verifying that. But in the future, as stated, we'll have other ways in order to verify that, like geolocation, like biometric data, right? So, and also for our version 2 DApp, we're trying to make this way more seamless, so it's automatically recorded. This is for if they want to donate, right? And so if somebody wants to donate a specific project, they go on that specific project and they say they want to donate. And so, let's say they want to donate, 5, for example, and they put their email address, they donate, obviously opens their wallet, right? And we're just using CELO just for this example. They confirm, and then the transaction processes. And then after a second, it is complete. And then when it's complete, as I stated, what they get an email, but also simultaneously, then there comes the milestones, right? So let's say a volunteer organization has completed the milestone. They mark complete, right? They put specific, images, for example, in order to go and put that proof. Let's say they want to put 1, for example, and then they kind of state like, we have completed this project. These are specific metrics that we've done. These are our financial statements, for example, and then they mark it as complete. Now, when they mark it as complete, what happens is the donor receives an email basically saying that, hey, this project that you've donated to, they've marked this milestone as complete, right? Can you please go check this right now and, verify, based if it meets your standards of that they have completed a certain milestone. Now, obviously, as stated previously, this is version 1 of the decentralized application. And, although that we're at the beginning of the project, what we aim to do is the fact that we like to really show instead of just tell, right? So a lot of things are going to be coming in version 2, is allowing these volunteers to record their time, automatically with biometric and geolocation data. Another thing that's coming through is the fact that to allow organizations to sign up without having to sign it with their wallet, right? Another thing that's going through is how can we incorporate more information and more data, right, in a seamless fashion that actually verifies these projects to a greater extent. And so these are a lot of things, but the best thing about the fact that we have the foundation and we're building upon this rapidly.
This is
And
really
I wish
cool.
I narrated, good enough. The person
No,
who's saying narrates it way better, but
that's okay. No, this was great, man. I love it. Hey, I'm gonna
you're a
throw a
mute, Pat.
feature. Uh,
Oh, no, you're not on mute. Sorry, I put the thing on mute. Sorry, my bad.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. So I'm going to add in one. I'm going to throw a feature request at you also, which is it'd be really cool if you could also verify organizations that are not going to be necessarily using DeVO for the time being. So like one of the organizations, like I'm really passionate about a philanthropy called Wild Aid that does wildlife trafficking work. And I would love to have the ability for like us at Bitwave, if we were to do something like where let's like the example we're giving where we're going to take a percentage of our streaming revenue and send it to something like that. It'd be awesome if someone like almost imagine like an ENS, but instead of like an ENS that ENS does, do one like a DeVO dubbed anointed ENS, so that when we send money to Wild Aid, it's very, very clear it's coming from Bitwave to Wild Aid, and then that becomes part of our corporate transparency around giving. So that would be valid verifying even companies that might not keep the funds, they might immediately sell them, but at
Yeah.
least that you then have an on-chain record that you did donate to that organization.
100%. And then, in addition to that, it's like, it's the gamification of that, right? So it's like when right now when corporation, donates, they have their NFTs, or just like an enterprise NFT, but, customizing that to where it becomes, kind of like an ENS domain, but also simultaneously gamifying that to where you have like leadership boards, right?
Yeah,
Now have these companies competing with one another. And that's what we're trying to implement as well.
I love it. That's really cool. Great demo. So we got a couple of other questions here. So this is one of the questions. Unfortunately, the majority of cash donations come from individuals. How do you anticipate driving more donations from corporations? So
Yeah, so a lot of guys come from donate, and this is the thing, right? Is like, why would corporations want to donate in general? Corporations would want to donate in order to increase their shareholder value. Actually, to be more specific, they'd want to increase it in order to increase their goodwill, which is one of the most, which is actually the most valuable intangible asset on a company's balance sheet. And so, how do you do that, right?
until crypto came along. Now crypto. That's okay. That's a little accountant humor right there for all the folks in the audience. Go ahead.
No, 100%. That in addition to crypto is the fact that, why do these corporations even want to contribute to ESG efforts, right? And the reason for that is because, stuff like 92% of consumers want to buy a product that supports a cause, right? Another thing is the fact that there's enhanced financial performance and enhanced brand awareness, and there's attraction and development of top talent, and it's so on and so forth. So, but how do you get these corporations in order to want to do this even more, right? How do you make them more effective? And that's where DeVO comes in. DeVO comes in to where it doesn't only recognize the problems that volunteers face, doesn't only recognize the problems that donors face, doesn't only recognize the problems that volunteer organizations face, but it also recognizes the problem that corporations face, the fact that they want to increase their goodwill. They know how valuable it is, but they see it as unfortunately being kind of inefficient right now. So what DeVO does is making that more efficient, making it a better investment for them, utilizing blockchain technology, right? Where they can have Web3 powered advertising. That's, as I was talking with Pat right now, the ENS domain being one, where they're able to access other corporate services such as recruiting, because volunteerism is one of the most prominent characteristics these corporations look for in recruits. And it's also
I'll throw out another one, by the way,
yeah.
that's pretty fun, which would be, you can imagine with the blockchain, you actually can imagine a really cool corporate matching. Like when I used to work at Cisco had corporate matching for donations, but it was kind of a pain to do it. Like it was really, really hard to do it. But imagine a world where I sign in, I basically sign, I sign a message with a wallet, and then, you more or less just monitor any donations. If you see money go to, if I personally donate to Wild Aid, then the company, knowing I'm an employee, could very easily do a match on that automatically without you having to do anything. There's some really, really cool properties that you get from the blockchain on this stuff.
100%, and because these corporations, a lot of them not even, corporate matching, but also they want to start their own projects, right? When you see these, when I was at MetLife, for instance, right, or Next Era, or even Citrix, it's as you said, right? These companies are not only matching donations, but they're also starting their own projects, right? See these, they give them time off to do that. They even give them incentives to do that.
Yep, 100%. Well, we're getting on to the top of the hour here. This is your email, is that right? This is your email?
Yep, that's it.
If anyone would like to reach out to Hamdee here, please feel free to. Hamdee, this has been really great. Hey, one last minute question here. Will you release this video? Is this video downloadable anywhere?
Right now it's not, honestly. And as I said, the person who's speaking sounds, on the video sounds way better than me. But yeah, we still have to, communicate internally, but we're most probably going to do that.
Well, I'm sure the person who has that question, feel free to email Hamdee.
Reach out to me.
Figure out a way to get deeper into it there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Hamdee, thank you so much for being on. This is really, really fun. Got to explore a part of the world I don't know too much about, and really interesting. And I look forward to obviously us partnering more on these things. This is a really fun topic, and it just fits in so perfectly with digital assets. Like there's a few different places where digital assets are perfect. Supply chain is perfect. This one is just spot on for it. Like philanthropy is just perfect for blockchain and crypto. So I'm excited to keep this going. Thank you so much, everybody. Hamdee, any final words?
Yeah, no, 100%. We've been, and thanks for that, Pat. We've been building this project for 2 years. We've seen just a phenomenal traction, and to be able to, to partner with amazing projects, for example, like Bitwave, who, a lot of the questions that we saw, Pat, even in the middle presentation is like, what collaborations do you have, or how you'll be able to utilize them, that's what is going to allow us to redefine philanthropy as we want. Like, just if I may, Pat, like a couple of things, like, we thought about, with Bitwave, is allowing, for example, clients to be able to easily, right, to have like a unique and fully transparent blockchain-based gateway to donate tax-deductible donations to verified projects, or have a goodwill vehicle for advertising, recruitment, and data acquisition, or nonprofit organizations have the ability to expend the digital assets in a verified recorded manner, or donors and corporations having increasing insight into the viability of nonprofit organizations. All that is made possible, with integrations that we have with entities and companies like Bitwave, right?
I love it.
Yeah, and so like that's if people were asking, that was kind of like the proof of utility that we're utilizing and that we're building towards. And these are the kind of collaborations that are significantly important, for not only DeVO but also for other projects out there who are trying to achieve, great things.
Amazing. Well, as I said, Hamdee, thank you so much for being on. This was really, really great. We'll talk a lot more, don't worry. If anyone has any questions, feel free to email Hamdee at this address that I just had on the screen, or feel free to email us at Bitwave, info@bitwave.io, if you have any questions for us, as per usual. This was absolutely delightful. Thank you so much, buddy. Have a good one. Bye, everybody. Happy holidays. Have a great new year. We'll talk to you in January.